High Admiral Corveth stood on the command deck of the Eternal Sovereignty, his four eyes watching the endless darkness of space through the massive viewing window. The flagship of the Imperial Seventh Fleet was the most powerful ship ever built by the Velthari Empire. It carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Its sensors could detect a single atom moving through space from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Nothing surprised the Empire anymore. They had ruled the galaxy for 300,000 years. They had seen everything, conquered everything, and controlled everything. The outer perimeter of their territory was protected by sensor arrays that covered every possible approach. No ship could enter Imperial space without being detected, identified, and tracked. This was why Corveth enjoyed these patrol missions. They were quiet, peaceful. Nothing ever happened at the border because nothing could happen. The detection grid was perfect. Then the alarm started screaming. Corveth turned sharply as red lights flashed across every console on the bridge. His officers shouted in confusion, their fingers flying across control panels. The main display screen flickered with data that made no sense. "Report," Corveth demanded. His voice was calm but firm. "Something crossed the perimeter, Admiral," his sensor officer said. The young Velthari's voice was shaking. "The grid detected it for exactly 0.003 seconds before we lost it." "Lost it? We do not lose contacts. Find it again." "I cannot, Admiral. It is gone. Moving too fast to track." Corveth walked to the sensor station and looked at the data himself. What he saw made his blood run cold. The object had crossed their detection grid at 94% of the speed of light. Not using hyperspace, not using jump drives, not using any form of faster-than-light travel that the Empire recognized. It was simply moving, in normal space, at nearly the speed of light. "That is impossible," Corveth said quietly. "Yes, Admiral, it is." He studied the reading again. No identification beacon, no energy signature from engines, no communication signals, no subspace wake. The object had left almost no trace of its passage. If their sensors had been even slightly less advanced, they would have missed it entirely. "What was it?" Corveth asked. "A ship? A probe? A weapon?" "Unknown, Admiral. We detected it for such a short time that we could not determine its size or composition. We only know its speed and direction." "Direction? Where did it come from?" The sensor officer hesitated. His hands trembled as he brought up a star map on the main display. A red line showed the object's trajectory, extending backward into space. "It came from the galactic rim, Admiral. From the dead zone." From the dead zone. Corveth felt something he had not felt in centuries of military service. Fear. The dead zone was a region of space that the Empire had sealed off 12,000 years ago. It contained nothing of value, no useful resources, no strategic positions, just a handful of unremarkable star systems that had been placed under permanent quarantine. The reason for the quarantine was a single species, a primitive race that had failed the uplift protocols and been left to evolve on their own. They were considered so unimportant that most Imperial citizens did not even know they existed. "Pull the records," Corveth ordered. "Everything we have on the quarantine zone and its inhabitants." It took several minutes to access the ancient files. They had been sealed for thousands of years, marked as low priority, and forgotten. When the information finally appeared on screen, Corveth read it carefully. Species, 7,831. Local name, humans. Homeworld, Earth. Classification, failed. Uplift candidate. Status, contained. Threat level, negligible. The file had not been updated in 12,000 years. Corveth read the evaluation report. Humans had been discovered when they were still primitive, barely capable of leaving their own planet. They had been assessed for uplift, the process by which the Empire brought lesser species into galactic civilization. But they had failed, not because they were stupid. The report noted that humans were surprisingly intelligent for such a young species, not because they were too violent. Though the report mentioned that they did fight among themselves often, they failed because of something else. Something that the evaluators found deeply disturbing. Humans refused to accept limits. When the evaluation team explained the laws of galactic travel to human scientists, the humans had listened politely. They had asked questions. They had taken notes. And then they had said something that shocked the evaluators. "But what if you are wrong?" The Empire had spent 300,000 years mapping the rules of physics. They knew exactly how fast ships could travel. They knew the maximum acceleration that living beings could survive. They knew what was possible and what was impossible. Humans did not seem to understand this. They did not see limits as facts. They saw them as challenges, as problems to be solved, as walls to be broken through. The evaluators had recommended immediate quarantine. A species that did not accept reality was a species that could not be controlled. Better to leave them alone in their little corner of space. Let them evolve naturally. In a few million years, they would either go extinct or finally accept the truth of the universe. Corveth closed the file. He stood in silence for a long moment, thinking, 12,000 years. The humans had been alone for 12,000 years. What had they become in all that time? What had they built? What had they learned? And why was something from their space moving faster than any ship in the Imperial fleet? Send a probe to the quarantine zone, Corveth ordered. I want to know what is happening on their homeworld. Admiral, that would require special authorization. The quarantine has been in place for, I know how long it has been in place. Send the probe. I will handle the authorization myself. The probe was launched within the hour. It was a small, fast vessel, unmanned and equipped with the best sensors available. It would reach the edge of human space in 3 weeks and transmit its findings back to the fleet. Corveth waited. He continued his patrol duties. He filed his report about the anomaly and sent it to Imperial Command. He received a response telling him not to worry. The object was probably a natural phenomenon, a rogue asteroid. Space debris, nothing to concern himself with. He did not believe them. 3 weeks passed. The probe reached the quarantine zone. It sent its first transmission, then nothing. Corveth waited another day, another week. The probe was gone. Not destroyed, as far as they could tell. Just silent, as if it had never existed. He sent a second probe. It disappeared as well. A third probe. Same result. Corveth stood on his command deck and stared at the star map. The dead zone sat at the edge of Imperial space like a dark wound. Something was in there. Something that could catch their probes. Something that could move faster than their best sensors could track. Something that remembered being locked away for 12,000 years. He thought about the evaluation report. About a species that refused to accept limits. About scientists who looked at the laws of physics and asked, what if you are wrong? For the first time in his long career, High Admiral Corveth wondered if the Empire had made a terrible mistake. He requested a meeting with Imperial Command. He told them about the anomaly, about the probes, about his concerns. They told him he was overreacting. He was not so sure. Somewhere in the darkness, something was moving. Something fast, something silent, something patient, and it was coming closer. 3 months passed after the first sighting. The object appeared again, and again, and again. The Imperial Navy started calling it the Ghost. It never stopped moving. It never sent signals. It never responded to communication attempts. It simply appeared at the edge of sensor range, moved through Imperial space at impossible speeds, and vanished before anyone could react. High Admiral Corveth kept a record of every sighting. By the end of the 3rd month, there had been 14 confirmed contacts. The Ghost had been seen near military bases, communication stations, shipyards, and colony worlds. It was never in the same place twice. Its path seemed random at first, but Corveth began to notice a pattern. It was mapping them. The Ghost was surveying Imperial space. It was learning the location of everything important. Every defense station, every fleet deployment, every population center. It was building a complete picture of the Empire's strength and weakness, and the Empire could do nothing to stop it. The Senate was furious. How could the greatest civilization in the galaxy be helpless against a single unknown vessel? Representatives demanded answers. Military commanders made excuses. The Emperor himself sent a message to Corveth, ordering him to solve the problem. Corveth was given command of a special task force. His mission was simple: capture the Ghost or destroy it. He was given 12 dreadnoughts, the largest warships in the fleet. 200 support vessels joined them. It was the most firepower assembled in one place in over a century. His plan was straightforward. The Ghost moved in patterns. Its path could be predicted if you studied the data carefully enough. Corveth used the Empire's best computers to calculate where it would appear next. He positioned his fleet along the predicted path. His ships spread out in a net formation, their weapons ready. If the Ghost came through this sector, it would fly straight into a wall of firepower. Corvith waited on the bridge of the Eternal Sovereignty. His officers were tense. Everyone knew what was at stake. If they failed, the Empire's reputation would suffer. If they succeeded, they would be heroes. Contact, the sensor officer announced. The Ghost has entered the sector. Speed is 97% of light speed. It is heading directly toward us. All ships, prepare to fire on my command, Corvith said. The Ghost appeared on their screens. For the first time, they got a clear reading. Corvith stared at the data in disbelief. The object was small, barely larger than a shuttle. It had no visible weapons, no shields that they could detect. It looked almost fragile compared to the massive warships surrounding it. It is not slowing down, the sensor officer reported. Impact with our formation in 30 seconds. All ships, fire. The space around the Ghost erupted in light. Hundreds of weapons fired at once. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy beams. The combined firepower could have destroyed a small planet. Every shot missed. The Ghost moved. It did not dodge like a normal ship. It did not weave or spin or change direction in any way that made sense. It simply was not where the weapons were aimed. It flowed through the barrage like water flowing around stones. The shots that should have hit it passed through empty space. How is it doing that? Corvith demanded. No one had an answer. The Ghost continued through the formation. Ships tried to track it, but their targeting systems could not keep up. It was moving too fast, changing direction too quickly. The maneuvers it performed were impossible. The acceleration required would have killed any crew. The G-forces would have crushed any living being into paste. Yet the Ghost moved as if physics did not apply to it. It is slowing down, the sensor officer said suddenly. Admiral, it is stopping. Corvith looked at the display. The Ghost had reached the center of their formation. It hung motionless in space, surrounded by 12 dreadnoughts and 200 support vessels. Every weapon in the fleet was aimed at it. It did nothing. For 3 seconds, the Ghost simply floated there. Silent. Still. Waiting. Then it transmitted. Every ship in the fleet received the signal at the same time. It was a narrow beam, precisely aimed, using a frequency that cut through all their encryption. The message contained only one data packet. An image appeared on every screen. It showed a planet, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling across its surface, a small world, unremarkable by galactic standards, Earth, the human homeworld. Beneath the image was text, simple words in the Empire's own language. We remember. The Ghost began to move again. In less than a second, it accelerated from 0 to 97% of light speed. The G-forces were calculated at over 15,000. No living thing could survive that. No machine the Empire had ever built could perform such a maneuver. And then it was gone. Corvith stood in silence. Around him, his officers were frozen in shock. No one spoke. No one moved. We remember. 2 words. That was all the humans had sent after 12,000 years of silence. Not a threat, not a demand, not a declaration of war. Just a reminder. We remember what you did to us. We remember being locked away. We remember being forgotten. Corvith thought about the quarantine, about a species that refused to accept limits, about scientists who asked, "What if you are wrong?" when told about the laws of physics. 12,000 years. The humans had been alone for 12,000 years. They had evolved. They had advanced. They had built ships that could outrun anything in the Imperial fleet, and they remembered. The Admiral looked at the image of Earth still displayed on his screen. Such a small world. Such a young species. They should have been nothing. They should have remained primitive and isolated, eventually dying out like so many other failed species. Instead, they had become something else. Something the Empire could not track, could not catch, could not stop. "What are your orders, Admiral?" his second-in-command asked. Corvith did not answer immediately. He was thinking about the future, about what the humans might want, about what they might do. "We return to Imperial Command," he finally said. "We need to access the sealed archives. I want to know everything about species 7,831, everything about how they think, everything about why they were quarantined. Do you believe they are a threat, Admiral?" Corvith looked at the empty space where the Ghost had been. A ship that small should not exist. A ship that fast should be impossible. A ship that maneuverable should violate every law of physics, and yet it was real. I do not know if they are a threat, he said slowly. But I know they are no longer the primitive species we locked away. They have become something new, something different. He paused. Something that remembers. The fleet turned and began the long journey back to Imperial space. Behind them, the darkness was silent and empty. But somewhere out there, in the void between stars, the humans were watching. They had been watching for a very long time, and they were patient. The Imperial Archive on Thessar Prime was the largest collection of knowledge in the galaxy. It contained records stretching back 300,000 years. Every discovery, every war, every species the Empire had ever encountered was documented here. High Admiral Corveth walked through the ancient halls, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. He had spent 3 weeks requesting access to the sealed records. The bureaucrats had resisted. The files on species 7,831 were classified at the highest level. No one had looked at them in thousands of years, but Corveth was persistent. After the ghost incident, after the message that simply said, "We remember," he needed answers. The Senate eventually approved his request. Now he stood in a chamber deep beneath the archive, surrounded by data crystals containing everything the Empire knew about humanity. He began to read. The first files contained the initial survey of Earth. The Empire had discovered humans 40,000 years ago. At that time, humans were barely more than animals. They lived in small groups. They used simple tools. They had not yet developed writing or cities. The survey team had marked them as potential future candidates and moved on. Earth was not important enough to warrant immediate attention. 28,000 years later, another survey team visited. They found something unexpected. Humans had changed. They had built cities, created languages, developed mathematics and science. They had even begun to explore their own solar system. The speed of their development was unusual. Most species took much longer to reach this stage. The survey team recommended immediate evaluation for uplift. Corveth read the evaluation reports carefully. They were detailed and thorough. The evaluators had spent years studying humanity. They had learned their languages, observed their cultures, tested their intelligence. The conclusion was clear. Humans were smart enough for uplift. They had the potential to become productive members of galactic civilization, but the evaluators recommended against it. The problem was not intelligence. It was not violence. Though humans were certainly violent, it was something deeper. Something in the way humans thought. Corveth found a passage that had been highlighted by the original evaluators. Humans do not process limitations the way other species do. When presented with a boundary, most species accept it as reality. They work within the limits they are given. Humans do not do this. They see limits as temporary obstacles. They believe that any barrier can be overcome with enough effort and time. This applies to physical laws as well as social rules. We explained the maximum speed of travel in normal space. They asked why it could not be increased. We explained the acceleration limits for biological beings. They asked how those limits could be changed. They do not argue or rebel. They simply do not accept. The evaluators had found this deeply disturbing. A species that did not accept limits was unpredictable. They could not be controlled through normal methods. They could not be given rules and expected to follow them forever. The recommendation was quarantine. Seal off human space. Let them develop on their own. Eventually, they would hit the same walls every species hit. They would learn that some things truly were impossible, or they would destroy themselves trying. Corveth continued reading. He found records of the quarantine implementation. Ships had been posted around human space. Monitoring stations had been established. The humans were watched for several centuries. Then the Empire lost interest. Humans were not important. They were just another failed species in a galaxy full of them. The monitoring stations were shut down. The patrol ships were reassigned. The quarantine remained official policy, but no one actually enforced it. 12,000 years passed. No one checked on the humans. No one cared. Corveth felt a cold anger building in his chest. The Empire had sealed an intelligent species inside their own solar system and then forgotten about them. They had assumed the humans would fail, so they never bothered to confirm it. He searched for any additional information. Most of the files were empty. Nothing had been recorded since the quarantine began. But deep in the archive, he found something interesting. A suppressed report. It had been written by a single analyst who had disagreed with the quarantine decision. His name was Verath Cole, and he had been executed for sedition shortly after submitting his minority opinion. Corvith read the report with growing unease. "We are making a terrible mistake," Verath Cole had written. "We assume humans will fail because we failed. We assume the limits we discovered are absolute because we could not break them. But humans do not think as we do. They do not see barriers as facts. They see them as challenges. Consider what we know about their history. Every time they encountered a limit, they found a way around it. They could not fly, so they built machines that flew for them. They could not survive in hostile environments, so they created suits that protected them. They could not travel beyond their planet, so they built rockets. We told them that faster-than-light travel was impossible. They asked why. We had no answer except because it is. This is not good enough for them. They will keep asking why. They will keep looking for solutions, and given enough time they may find one. We are not containing a threat. We are creating one. We are giving them time. Time to think. Time to experiment. Time to develop without our interference. And they will remember that we put them there. In 12,000 years, we may look back at this decision as the worst mistake the Empire ever made. Verath Cole had been right. Corvith closed the file and sat in silence. He thought about the ghost, about a ship that moved faster than anything the Empire had ever built, about maneuvers that should be impossible. The humans had done it. They had broken through the walls. They had found ways around the limits that every other species accepted as absolute. And now they were here. He requested the latest intelligence reports on ghost sightings. What he read made his heart stop. The number of sightings had increased dramatically over the past month. At first, there had been one ghost, then two, then 5. Now there were hundreds. They were everywhere, moving through Imperial space in all directions, mapping everything, watching everything, an invisible swarm that the Empire could not track, could not catch, could not stop. Corvith stood up slowly. He needed to report this to the Senate immediately. The Empire was not facing a single mysterious ship anymore. They were facing a civilization that had evolved in darkness for 12,000 years, a civilization that remembered. He walked out of the archive chamber, his mind racing. The humans were coming. He did not know what they wanted. He did not know if they planned peace or war. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Empire was not ready for what was about to happen. The Imperial Senate was in chaos. For 300,000 years, the Velthari Empire had ruled the galaxy without serious challenge. They had conquered every enemy. They had absorbed every rival. They had built a civilization that spanned millions of star systems. Now they faced something they could not control. The ghosts were everywhere. Hundreds of them moved through Imperial space at will. They scanned military bases. They monitored communication networks. They observed shipyards and colony worlds. They flew past defense stations without slowing down, and the Empire could do nothing to stop them. Trade routes became unreliable. Merchant ships reported seeing the ghosts, watching them from a distance. Some captains refused to leave port. The economy began to suffer. Fear spread through the population. The Senate demanded action. Admirals proposed plans. Ships were deployed. Weapons were tested. Nothing worked. The ghosts were too fast to catch, too small to target effectively, too numerous to track. For every one they detected, 10 more slipped past unseen. The humans had built an invisible fleet that made the entire Imperial Navy look slow and blind. High Admiral Corvith watched the panic spreading through the government. He attended meeting after meeting where powerful people shouted at each other and accomplished nothing. He listened to proposals that would never work and plans that were already outdated. Finally, he made a decision. "We should try to communicate," he told the Senate. "The humans sent us a message. They said they remember. Perhaps they will tell us what they want." Many senators opposed the idea. Communication implied equality. The Empire did not negotiate with lesser species. They gave orders and expected obedience. But they had no other options. A message was broadcast on all frequencies, directed toward the quarantine zone. The Empire requested dialogue. They asked the humans to send a representative. For weeks, there was no response. Then, on a quiet morning, a signal arrived. It contained coordinates to an empty star system on the border of human space. One human vessel would meet them there. Corvith volunteered to go himself. He took his flagship with a minimal escort. If this was a trap, he wanted to risk as few lives as possible. The journey took 2 weeks. When the Eternal Sovereignty arrived at the coordinates, they found a human ship waiting. It was small and elegant. Its design was completely foreign to Imperial eyes. Smooth curves instead of sharp angles. No visible weapons. No obvious engines. It looked less like a warship and more like a work of art. A shuttle detached from the human vessel and approached the flagship. Corveth's officers wanted to raise shields, to prepare weapons. He ordered them to stand down. They could have destroyed us at any time, he said. If they wanted us dead, we would already be dead. The shuttle docked. Corveth went to the airlock himself to greet the human representative. The door opened. A human stepped through. She was small by Velthari standards. Her body was fragile-looking, with thin limbs and soft skin. She wore no uniform, carried no visible weapons. Her hair was dark, cut short. Her eyes were calm and watchful. "Admiral Corveth," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I am Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Terran Explorer Corps. Thank you for meeting with me." Corveth studied her for a moment. This small, soft creature was a representative of the species that had built the ghosts. The species that had broken through limits the Empire considered absolute. "Captain Tanaka," he said, "you have been violating our space for months. Your ships have mapped our military installations. Your presence has disrupted our trade routes. I need to know what you want." Tanaka smiled slightly. "We violated your space, Admiral. We broke the quarantine 6,000 years ago. We have been out here the whole time. You just could not see us." Corveth felt a chill run through him. 6,000 years? Yes. While your empire forgot about us, we were busy. We explored. We expanded. We built. That is impossible. We would have detected you. Would you? Your sensors look for energy signatures from engines. We do not use engines the way you do. Your sensors look for subspace wakes from FTL travel. We do not use FTL travel. Corveth frowned. If you do not use faster than light travel, how did you expand? The distances between stars would take decades to cross. Centuries, actually. Sometimes millennia. Tanaka's expression did not change. But we learned patience. We built generation ships that traveled for hundreds of years. We built sleeper vessels where crews hibernated for the journey. We learned to think in terms of centuries instead of days. You crossed interstellar space at sublight speeds? We crossed interstellar space at almost light speed. Your quarantine gave us 12,000 years, Admiral. Do you have any idea how much a species can change in 12,000 years? Corveth was silent. He thought about the Empire's history. 300,000 years of civilization. They had become comfortable. Slow. They assumed they knew everything worth knowing. The humans had started from nothing and built ships that could outrun anything the Empire had ever created. "What do you want?" Corveth asked again. Tanaka's expression became serious. "We do not want war. We do not want conquest. We do not want revenge for the quarantine, even though we would be justified. Then what? Acknowledgement. We want the quarantine officially lifted. We want recognition as a sovereign civilization with equal standing in galactic affairs. We want to be treated as partners, not as a contained threat." She paused. "And we want an apology." Corveth considered her words. "And if the Empire refuses?" Tanaka's smile returned, but it was colder now. "Then we stop being patient." "That sounds like a threat." "It is a statement of fact. We have been waiting a very long time, Admiral. We could wait longer if necessary, but we would prefer not to." Corveth wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that the Empire did not bow to demands from lesser species, but as he looked at this small human woman, he realized something important. Humanity was not a lesser species anymore. "I will bring your request to the Senate," he said. "Thank you, Admiral." Tanaka turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. During our conversation, your flagship has been surrounded by our vessels. They have been here the entire time." Corveth felt his blood go cold. "Our sensors detected nothing. I know. We wanted you to understand what you are dealing with. You cannot see us. You cannot catch us. You cannot stop us. But we do not want to be your enemy. We want to be your neighbor." She stepped into the shuttle. "The choice is yours." As her shuttle departed, Corveth turned to his sensor officer. "Full scan, maximum range, find those ships." The officer worked frantically. His face went pale. "Admiral, I am detecting over 3,000 vessels within weapons range. They are decloaking now. Corveth looked at the view screen. Across the darkness of space, human ships were appearing. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. They had been invisible until this moment. They had been watching the entire time, and the Empire had never known. The Imperial Senate Chamber was the largest hall in the galaxy. It had been built to impress and intimidate. Massive columns rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Thousands of seats surrounded a central platform where speakers addressed the assembly. Every species in the Empire was represented here. Every world, every power. For 300,000 years, this chamber had been the center of galactic civilization. Today, it was filled with fear. High Admiral Corveth stood before the Senate and delivered his report. He told them about the meeting with Captain Tanaka. He told them about the 3,000 human ships that had surrounded his flagship without being detected. He told them about humanity's demands, recognition, equality, an apology. The Senate erupted in argument. High Marshal Vren, the supreme commander of the Imperial military, was the first to speak. His voice was loud and angry. "This is unacceptable," he declared. "The Empire has ruled this galaxy for 300,000 years. We do not bow to primitives. We do not negotiate with species that we locked away as failures." Cheers rose from many senators. The Empire was proud. It did not accept being threatened by anyone. "We should crush them now," Vren continued, "before they become stronger. Our fleet outnumbers theirs. Our technology is superior. We should remind these humans why the galaxy feared us for millennia." More cheers. More support. Corveth waited until the noise died down. Then he spoke. "Our fleet cannot catch them. Our weapons cannot hit them. Our sensors cannot track them. They have ships that move at nearly the speed of light and execute maneuvers that would kill any of us. I watched our finest warships fire at a single human vessel. Every shot missed." The chamber went quiet. "You speak of crushing them," Corveth continued. "But how do you crush an enemy you cannot see? How do you fight a civilization that has spent 12,000 years preparing for this moment while we forgot they existed?" Vren's face twisted with anger. "You are a coward, Admiral. You want us to surrender without even trying to fight." "I want us to survive," Corveth replied. "I have seen what they can do. I have read the ancient reports about why they were quarantined. They do not think like us. They do not accept limits. When we told them faster than light travel was impossible, they found another way. When we told them they could not leave their solar system, they built ships that traveled for centuries. They turned our quarantine into an opportunity." Before Vren could respond, the lights in the chamber flickered. Every screen in the Senate activated at once. Static filled the displays for a moment. Then a face appeared. A human face. He was an older man with gray hair and weathered skin. His expression was calm and patient. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations. "Honored representatives of the Velthari Empire," he said. "My name is Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Continuity. I apologize for interrupting your debate, but I felt a demonstration was necessary." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Senators shouted. Guards rushed forward. But there was no intruder to catch. The man was speaking from somewhere else, his signal cutting through every security system the Empire had. Admiral Chen continued as if nothing was happening. "At this moment, human vessels are holding position at exactly 1,000 locations across your territory. We are not at military targets. We are at infrastructure, communication relays, power stations, transportation hubs, the systems that make your civilization function." The screens displayed a map showing Imperial space. 1,000 red dots appeared across it, marking human positions. "We could destroy them all," Chen said. "We could cripple your economy, blind your military, and isolate your worlds from each other. The war would be over before it began." He paused. "We choose not to." The chamber was silent now. Everyone was watching. Everyone was listening. "We do not want to rule you. We do not want to replace you. We want to join you as equals. We want to share what we have learned during our long isolation. We want to explore the galaxy together instead of against each other." His expression became harder. "But we will not be ignored. We will not be contained. And we will not be uplifted into your way of thinking. We are not primitives anymore. We are not failures. We are a civilization that has spent 12,000 years learning what is truly possible when you refuse to accept the word impossible. He leaned forward slightly. You thought you were quarantining a primitive species. You were actually giving us time to evolve without your limitations. Time to become something you could not predict. And now we are here, not as supplicants, not as threats, as neighbors who have been waiting a very long time to introduce ourselves. The screens went dark. Silence filled the chamber. Senators looked at each other in shock. High Marshal Vren's face had gone pale. Korveth stepped forward. The humans are offering us a choice. We can fight a war we cannot win against an enemy we cannot see, or we can accept them as equals and learn from each other. He looked around the chamber. I know what I would choose. The vote took 3 hours. Senators argued. Factions formed and broke apart. Pride battled against survival. In the end, pragmatism won. The quarantine was officially lifted. Humanity was recognized as a sovereign civilization with equal standing. The Senate issued a formal apology for the actions of 12,000 years ago. 6 months later, Korveth stood on a diplomatic station at the new border between human and imperial space. Beside him, Captain Yuki Tanaka watched the stars through a large window. You could have destroyed us, Korveth said. You had 12,000 years to prepare. We never even knew you were there. Yes, Tanaka agreed. We could have. Why did you not? She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. Because you taught us something important. When your evaluators came to Earth, they saw us as failures because we would not accept limits. But that is not quite right. We do not refuse to accept limits. We refuse to accept that limits are permanent. Everything changes. Everything evolves, including enemies. She turned to face him. You were our limit once, the great empire that trapped us and forgot us. And now look at us, standing together. Who knows what we could become if we stop seeing each other as walls and start seeing each other as challenges. Korveth thought about her words. He thought about 300,000 years of imperial history. The empire had grown comfortable. Slow. They had stopped asking questions. They had accepted that they knew everything worth knowing. The humans had refused to accept anything, and they had become something extraordinary. Perhaps, he said slowly, we could learn from you. Tanaka smiled. Perhaps you could. In the distance, human ships departed the station. They accelerated impossibly fast, too quick to track, too numerous to count. They vanished into the darkness between stars, but this time, they were not watching. They were not waiting. They were building something new, something that included the Empire, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had something it had almost forgotten: hope. Korveth watched the stars for a long time. He thought about walls, about limits, about a species that refused to accept either. The humans had changed everything, not through war, not through conquest, through patience, through persistence, through the simple belief that nothing was truly impossible. Perhaps, he thought, it was time for the Empire to learn the same lesson. The future was uncertain. The galaxy would never be the same. But standing at the edge of human space, looking out at the endless darkness, Korveth felt something he had not felt in a very long time: curiosity. And somewhere in the void, humanity kept moving forward, as they always had, as they always would.